news today across the pond, but let's hop across the pond into the UK. The news has been somewhat dramatic. I woke up, well, not woke up, I was up at like 4 or 5 this morning, and I was watching a press conference. I don't even know how it ended up on the page, but I was watching a press conference, and one person after the next got up and trashed Corbyn, making this case that the Labour Party has institutionalized anti-Semitism, calling Jeremy Corbyn a fucking anti-Semite. This is utter nonsense. Now, beyond that point, that they dislike what Jeremy Corbyn is doing with regards to Brexit, meaning the fact that he's going to initiate Brexit at all, or that he's willing to do it, bothers them. They want him to hold either a second referendum or countermand the fact that the referendum took place at all if he takes power. So 7 MPs pull away into their own independent organization. They're not at a point where they can stand for, bring people up for elections and everything else. But in this kind of big, splashy, dramatic display, all of them coming out anti-Corbyn, essentially Blairites, all using this platform to attack Jeremy Corbyn, and all pulling away, with the full knowledge that this may instantiate Tories into government for the next decade. And what I mean by that is, if these guys are not going to be part of the organization, and by the way, it's not just Labour. The news has just come out that their Tory ministers, or Tories, are also considering breaking away and joining a new party. Tory ministers and 4 Conservative backbench MPs poised to join new Labour splinter group. That's amazing. That's absolutely amazing. Let's go through part of this. I'm going to do this very fast because I'm going to bring on Jordan DeBat to talk more about this and give his perspective from what's taking place from standpoint inside the country itself. So let's go through this relatively quickly. All right, so let's see. So who will join the next group of independent groups? Oh, they've updated the story. All right. All right, a sensational press conference, and in fact, this is what the press conference, I mean, this is essentially a fair idea of what I was looking at this morning. A sensational press conference, Chuka Umunna, ringleader of the new group, made a direct appeal to politicians in all parties, warning voters were sick of politics as usual. Tom Watson, who's essentially a Blairite, said he believed the decision of the 7 MPs to resign and set up a new independent group was premature, but refused to condemn them as traitors, as he admitted he no longer recognized parts of Labour. Oh, listen to that. Now, here's the thing. When the Blairites took over, Blairites were calling themselves New Labour, just like Democrats were calling themselves third-way Democrats. It was their way of distinguishing themselves from old Labour. I mean, by definition, right? If you're calling yourself New Labour. What they are seeing is a resurgence of what Labour used to be. This thing where it's not these kind of neoliberal policies, but policies that represent working class Brits. That's what they're saying. I mean, some of them, even in the way they say it, it's like, I haven't changed, my party has changed. Yeah, it's changed from those Blairites in New Labour to something where somebody is actually looking for a fundamentally different country, or you can say the balance of power in the country where workers, unions, have more agency in regards to what they're doing. When I hear Democrats say stuff like that, you know, this party, like the billionaire Schultz that's running, he's just a Democrat. If you look at what Schultz is basically a corporate Democrat that's mad that the Democratic Party has slid anyway over to the left when talking about this idea of wealth tax and those type of things. Well, same thing. I would imagine if you talk to Schultz, Schultz would say, I don't recognize aspects of the party. No, because what you were recognizing were aspects of New Labour, not what they were fundamentally were. 2 parties that represent the interests of the rich. Let's not have that. You have a resurgence of what is different. Corbyn's. So, not to mention, the anti-Semitism thing is just a canard. It's an attack. It's not genuine from the perspective of Corbyn. Let's say it that way. There are resignation signals, the biggest split in British politics since the SDP walked out of Labour in 1981 and realigned the left, paving way for Tony Blair's election in 1997. They accuse Mr. Corbyn of turning Labour into a racist party that weakens national security, accepts the narrative of Britain's enemies and lashed him for facilitating Brexit. That part is extraordinarily interesting. A racist party, now this is people attacking Jeremy Corbyn as an anti-Semite, haven't not one shred of anything to make this stick, but they still scream it with this idea that if you scream it loud enough, people would think at the very least you're screaming about something, even if it's not to the severity that you're talking about. There's no smoke there. There's no fire there. It's just people howling like banshees. The other part, weakens national security. That part is a tell. That's a magnificent tell. I mean, when Britain comes out and the Prime Minister accuses Vladimir Putin of some kind of poisoning, and Jeremy Corbyn says, well, wait, we need to see the evidence for this first. They booed him. Think about what we're saying here. Somebody's saying we need to see the evidence. Britain was party to one of the worst foreign policy disasters in my lifetime, meaning the Iraq War. And went along with this idea that there were weapons of mass destruction in Iraq when it is suspected that they were cherry-picking the information, when they were cherry-picking information. A country that was part and parcel and responsible for that ignores actual evidence when discerning who may be responsible for something that took place. It was God's work to make that point, that we don't necessarily notice. We need to look at the evidence. It is right to say that we shouldn't have an interventionist foreign policy. And the fact of the matter is, what they're saying when he weakens national security is very that specific thing. He's not as hawkish as some of these other people. And for the anti-Semitic tweets, this racist party, supporting Palestinians is not by definition racist. Even though if you were in the United States or if you were in Britain and somebody advocates for Palestinian rights, by definition, that advocation of Palestinian rights somehow in the warped brains of people who are dealing with this stuff is tantamount to anti-Semitism. It's utter nonsense. It's a certain lobby that has influence in British and the United States politics that pushes people to say stuff like this. They're doing this stuff for a political effect. They won't like the fact that he has any level of support for Palestinians. They want that support to be entirely for Israel. I guess my point is, understand what they're saying, the subtext of what they're saying. The overt ways in which they say it, that's one thing. But the reality of it is usually something different. And facilitate Brexit. And the last part is, he's not willing to countermand the referendum that took place. Fuck democracy. He's not willing to countermand the referendum. They want him to stay within the European Union, or let's say go for a fundamentally different notion of Brexit. They want to put this up to a public vote, with this notion that the public is probably going to vote down whatever they're going to come up with, because there's such divisions in this thing of Brexit. Meaning they're not going to be able to agree on anything. Their point is they want to stay in the European Union. So for them, that perspective is perfectly great. They are pulling themselves out, creating this new independent party, and is encouraging other members to join them. This is including the Tories. Apparently there are some Tories that are considering making this departure also. Let's keep going. These were pictures from the meeting. This is Tom Watson, Blairite, backstabber, who comes out and says, I don't want to call these guys traitors. Just to give a summary of what took place. 7 MPs resigned from Labour Party and set up the independent group, launching a ferocious blast at Jeremy Corbyn and transforming the party into a hotbed of abuse and racism. That is utter nonsense. That is utter nonsense. In and of itself, you've lost all credibility with that statement. The gang of seven idiots, are Chuka Uma, Lucien Berger, Chris Leslie, Angela Smith, Ann Kofi, Mike Gapes, and Gavin Shuker. Group includes former members of the shadow cabinet and includes politicians who have been MPs for decades. Corbyn hit back within moments to say he was disappointed the MPs were defecting away from Labour. The left-wing Momentum group that supports Corbyn accused the MPs of wanting to drag Britain back to the politics of the past. A furious backlash started on the left. Young Labour quoted the Red Flag Party anthem to brand MPs cowards and traitors. Yes. But the Board of Deputies of British Jews said that the defections were a searing indictment of the state of the Labour Party and the anti-Semitism scandal. No, it's not. It's not. It's not at all. It's a bunch of Blairites who don't like the political positioning of Corbyn. And like I said, part of that is the support for Palestinians is somewhat of an affront. to their own political and ideological leanings. That is, outright, complete, and unabashed support of Israel. Yeah, I'm going to wait till Gordon get on to go fully into this, but let's keep going. A jubilant Conservative Party seized on the split to warn Corbyn should never be allowed to the country for what he has done to Labour. Think about that. The Tories have now come out and said, yeah, we agree with these guys who are trashing Corbyn. So the question becomes this. Let's see, I said that part. John McDonnell came out and made a really good point. John McDonnell's thing was, you are going to enshrine a Tory government for the next decade. Right here. Yesterday warned Labour MPs thinking of leaving that they could keep it out of power for a decade if they take away votes in marginal seats. This is fascinating. Right here. Tory ministers and 4 Conservative backbench MPs poised to join new Labour splinter group. The Tories can laugh all they want. The Tories is also seeing support being drained away under the notion of Brexit. You have UKIP, or parties like UKIP, that are pushing for a hard Brexit, spiking in their membership when they realized that the Tory government wasn't going to give an actual Brexit, but a Brexit in name only. They had a surge of support in these other groups. Brexit is becoming a fault line, not just in the Tory government, but also in the Labour government. And it is possible that these guys are, not just possible, these guys have created a new splinter party that is pulling elements of Labour, but it also sounds like they're going to be pulling elements of the Tories. So I'm going to end this here. I'm not going to keep this one long because I want to bring on Gordon to talk about this. 11 minutes is not horrible as a primer on what is taking place in the UK. But this was mind-blowing. Like, this press conference was supposedly earth-shattering. I watched this with a certain level of, what the fuck? Those bastards, turncoats. I looked at it as you turncoats screaming at the computer screen. All right, I will end this here. I will see you guys probably in like 5 minutes, just however long it takes to get Gordon on the show. Thanks all. Bye-bye. If you enjoyed the content, please feel free to share, like, subscribe. You can always support through PayPal or Patreon. Thanks, everyone.